What would you do right now to punish Russia for what they did in 2016?
First of all, unlike Trump, you have to acknowledge the very seriousness of what they did. To try to undermine democracy in America and other countries is simply not acceptable, and they have got to pay a price. So we have a president who doesn't even acknowledge that. But I think we should be looking at very tough sanctions. This is an act of aggression against American democracy. It cannot be accepted.
Beyond what this administration?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and what would that do? I mean, are the Russians going to stop? Are you saying that's going to stop them
Well, I
from
can't give you a blueprint.
hacking? I mean,
But we have a president who doesn't even acknowledge, virtually does not even acknowledge the reality of what they did. Here is a Putin and his friends are trying to undermine American democracy and democracy in Europe. They have got to know that's not acceptable, and the world has got to tell them they're going to pay a very heavy price for it.
Hi everybody, my name is Mike. This is my YouTube page, Mox News. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you're finding something of value here. I truly do. So, there's over 9,500 videos on this Mox News YouTube page. I update every day, so be sure and hit the notifications button underneath the video right there to get the daily notifications that there's new Mox News videos to check out. Otherwise, you won't know what's going on with Mox News. So, I wanted to say, you know, Bernie Sanders has to man up, okay? He has to tell the truth. He's sounding as ridiculous as the mainstream media and Hillary Clinton and all the other Democrats who are completely full of shit, saying Russia, Russia, Russia. We know it's not true. In the 2016 election, Bernie Sanders would go on TV and he would say, the DNC is conspiring with Hillary Clinton to cheat me out of this election. And which was happening, which we all found out that Hillary's, a whole bunch of stuff happened, was worked out with the Hillary Clinton campaign by the DNC to give her an unfair advantage in the debates, in other areas. We know it's true. And then the superdelegates, of course. You know, the superdelegates just made it impossible for Bernie Sanders to win. So, you know, Bernie Sanders needs to man up and say, the reason Donald Trump, when you get asked questions about Russia, Bernie, you have to say, the reason Donald Trump is president is because the DNC refused to listen to their voters. And the Democratic elite chose to force Hillary Clinton, a horrible candidate, down the throats of the Democratic voters, which most of them gagged and turned away. And now we have Donald Trump. Instead of trying to act like all the other idiot Democrats, saying the Russians, come on, Bernie, how long you been in this job? In 2016, were you smarter then? Did you not have a clue about the Russians? Okay, because in 2016, he was saying the DNC is conspiring before the election happened. The DNC is conspiring before, you know, while the primary is going on. The DNC is conspiring with Hillary Clinton to give her an unfair advantage in this election. And it was true. And we all know that's what happened. That's how Hillary Clinton became a horrible, horrible candidate, became the nominee. And then she couldn't even beat just the most disgusting human being on earth. Okay? That's how horrible a candidate Hillary Clinton was. Okay? Again, you know, turd sandwich, giant douche. I understand it. I get it. So, and I'm not blaming anybody who would vote for those people. I'm just saying Bernie Sanders, in order to have credibility, has to step forward and say, look, it wasn't the Russians, it was the Democratic elite who refused to listen to their voters and chose a horrible candidate because it was her turn. That's why they chose Hillary Clinton. Okay, so And if Bernie doesn't say that, then he sounds just as ridiculous as the mainstream media, who never presented the slightest amount of evidence that Russia, and not only never has there been any evidence produced that Russia did anything. But I'm sure they did something. But the facts are that America does this in every election around the world. We've seen it in Iran, we've seen it in Venezuela, we've seen it in the Ukraine. It happens everywhere. In the Russian election, you don't think that the CIA is throwing money all over the Russian election to get somebody to run against Putin? Come on. And we see it, and you know it's true, and Bernie Sanders can go, look, the Russians aren't doing 1/10 of what the United States does when it comes to putting their thumb on the scales of elections around the world. You know, look what Trump did in Israel. Okay? Trump did everything possible to make it so Netanyahu could win. Right? And nobody says anything about it. The Russians. Don't be fucking stupid, Bernie. Man up and say, you chose a horrible candidate. The DNC and the Democratic elite forced a horrible candidate onto the Democrats, onto the American people. One of the most despised political figures in American history, Hillary Clinton, who couldn't even stand up. She's collapsing. She's having coughing fits. She was a horrible candidate. Man up, Bernie Sanders. Tell the American people the truth, or you look just as awful as all the other professional politician liars. And the American people know what the truth is. So if you don't speak it, then we know you're just another bullshit artist, Bernie. Okay? Plus, I don't think he can beat Trump. He looks incredibly nervous to me. He looks incredibly uncomfortable, like he can barely even do an interview. And I loved Bernie for the whole time I've been on YouTube. You guys know this. I've been a Bernie supporter until this 2016 election, where he just let Hillary and the Democratic elite walk away with it after he had all that support. All those people believing in him. And then he tries to shove him over to the worst, one of the most despised figures in American political history. Like, they don't have any integrity at all. Like Sarah Silverman, you know? Okay, anyways, Mox News survives solely on contributions. I'm going to play this whole interview with Bernie in a sec. I do this all day long. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. Mox News survives solely on donations from good people like you. I never put a commercial in here. I had to speak these words because it's important. And hopefully Bernie will hear them. And then he'll be a candidate maybe some people can really get excited about, because he's speaking truth instead of just trying to get through this interview without getting some gotcha question forced on him. And it's just horrible seeing him being all cringy like that. Anyways, again, Mox News survives solely on donations. The donations are incredibly slim. I need help. If you want Mox News to be here for the 2020 election, the craziest, most insane presidential election ever, Mox News' 5th presidential election here on YouTube, please give something back. Mox News needs your help, or I'm not going to make it. I've always said I will do this as long as I have the support of the people, the community that I serve. I have served over 65,000 videos. How many years have I served you? Please give something back. Please. Okay? I wouldn't ask if I didn't need help. Please. It's easy to give a donation at moxnews.com, or there's clickable links in the text body of this video. Stay cool one of these days. This war is going to end. You know it's true.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont became a household name in 2016 when he ran a progressive campaign for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. But much of that primary race was a one-on-one contest. He is now vying for the Democratic nomination again. But this time he's up against at least 20 other candidates. And Senator Sanders joins us now. Senator Sanders, welcome back to the NewsHour.
Good to be with you, Judy.
So let's start with our lead story tonight, and that is the stock market dropping over 470 points. Fears, analysts say, of a trade war with China, President Trump's policies toward China. It appears to many people that your approach to trade with China is very similar to the president's.
No, it is not. What I recognize is that for many years, our trade policies have been a disaster. If you look at NAFTA and you look at PNTR with China, in fact, it's cost us about 4 million decent-paying American jobs and helped lead the race to the bottom where wages were depressed in America. So I think we do need new trade policies that are fair to the working people of this country, not just to the CEOs. But as usual, I think Trump gets it wrong in terms of implementation.
But you would be tough on China, as he is.
I would be supportive of American workers. I think it is wrong that when large corporations are making huge profits, that they simply shut down in this country, throw American workers out on the street, then look for cheap labor abroad. So I believe that we have got to deal with that issue, but not the way Trump is dealing with it.
Well, let me turn to something that you spend a lot of time talking about in this campaign, and that is Medicare, health care, and namely a proposal for Medicare for all, guaranteed health care for every person, man, woman, and child in the country. I think everybody agrees the current system needs fixing. Everybody, more people need to be covered. But right now, this is an economy that is spending, what, $3.5 trillion a year on health care? It is a sixth of the American economy.
Right.
And even you acknowledge that doing something like Medicare for all would be a massive disruption, do away with private, okay, all right.
That wasn't my word, no.
All right, other people are saying it would be a massive disruption. Do away with private insurance. Why not move incrementally rather than
because
moving?
You have a dysfunctional system that is really rotten to the core. And let me tell you something, Judy. The people who are opposing Medicare for all in the insurance industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, these are people who are making huge compensation benefits, and they are seeing their corporations make huge profits. 10 largest drug companies made $69 billion in profits last year. Yeah, they don't like the idea that I intend to lower drug prices by 50%. But here is the bottom line. Right now, you got 34 million people, no health insurance, even more underinsured. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We end up spending twice as much per person on healthcare as do the people of any other country. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. How can anyone defend a dysfunctional system like that?
But when you have, as we said, such a huge part of the U.S. economy, the Congressional Budget Office did a nonpartisan analysis of your plan, essentially, universal coverage. They came away and they concluded many people employed in the healthcare system now would lose their jobs. They concluded that employer-based healthcare coverage that most non-elderly Americans now use would be eliminated. And they say fewer people would likely go into the medical profession because pay would be less.
That's exactly wrong. Right now, because of all of the stress that the insurance companies put on doctors, you're finding many doctors demoralized. Doctors are trained and nurses are trained to work with their patients, to try to do well by their patients. Right now, before they can do any procedure, they got to call up 3 insurance company folks. Here is the bottom line. All right. The bottom line is we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. We spend twice as much, and our health care outcomes are poor. Medicare right now, Judy, is the most popular health insurance program in the country. All that I want to do over a 4-year period is expand Medicare to all of our people. We will save the average American significant sums of money, give him or her freedom of choice regarding doctors and hospitals.
But you say it's freedom of choice, but you're doing away with private insurance.
Yes.
And we remember the reaction. Remember President Obama said you can keep your health care plan, you can keep your doctor. It didn't work out that way.
Because those were junk plans that he ended up doing away with. Right now, do you think the average American has freedom of choice with regard to doctor. If a doctor is not in your network, you can't go to that doctor. All that I want to say to the American people tonight is we are taking on the insurance companies and the drug companies who make huge profits off a dysfunctional system that is not working for the average American. They are going to spend, Judy, in my view, hundreds of millions of dollars trying to preserve their profits and their outrageous compensation packages. The guy who was head of Aetna created a merger with CVS. He got $500 million in bonus. I don't think that's where we should be spending healthcare dollars.
But your plan would call for some form of higher taxes, no question.
Of course. Look, if I'm going to do away with all of your premiums and your co-payments and your deductibles and we're expanding benefits, it has to be paid for. But when you eliminate premiums and deductibles and co-payments and out-of-pocket expenses, the average American will be better off.
Let's talk about the cost of college. One of your signature proposals, tuition-free college. You would impose a
Public colleges and universities, not
Public.
not Harvard. Public colleges
right.
and universities.
You would impose a financial transactions tax,
On
as
Wall
it's
Street.
called, to pay for it. But how much, what would this mean for the, 45 million Americans who have college debt right now? How would they benefit?
Oh, they would benefit very substantially.
Because they've left college and they're in debt.
This $900 billion that we're talking about. Look, here is the story. Right now, Wall Street profits are very, very high. They're charging you 17% interest rates on your credit card, real usury. We bailed them out after their illegal activity nearly destroyed the economy. So what I believe is at a time when hundreds of thousands of bright young kids can't afford to go to college, and millions of people are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt, this is an issue we have to deal with. So I am proudly, and I'm glad that more and more people are following my lead. I believe that in the 21st century, when you talk about public education, public colleges and universities should be tuition-free, and we substantially lower student debt. People should not be punished for getting a higher education in a competitive global economy.
And just quickly, the second part of this is right now, states would still have to pick up a
They would
good
have
bit
to.
of the cost.
Yes.
But many of these are states that have been cutting spending
Yeah.
for higher education.
Right.
How do you get them to flip and spend more?
Well, that's another issue. Instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, you got Amazon and dozens of other corporations not paying a nickel in federal income tax last year. So my view is that large, profitable corporations should start paying their fair share of taxes. We'll work with the states. But the bottom line is, in a competitive global economy, every kid in this country, regardless of his or her income, deserves a higher education if that is their goal.
Very quickly, a question on foreign policy. You've been saying recently you wish you had spoken more about foreign policy 2 years ago when you ran for president. What would you do right now to punish Russia for what they did in 2016?
First of all, unlike Trump, you have to acknowledge the very seriousness of what they did. To try to undermine democracy in America and other countries is simply not acceptable, and they have got to pay a price. So we have a president who doesn't even acknowledge that. But I think we should be looking at very tough sanctions. This is an act of aggression against American democracy. It cannot be accepted.
Beyond what this administration?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and what would that do? I mean, are the Russians going to stop? Are you saying that's going to stop them
Well, I
from
can't give you a blueprint.
hacking? I mean,
But we have a president who doesn't even acknowledge, virtually does not even acknowledge the reality of what they did. Here is a Putin and his friends are trying to undermine American democracy and democracy in Europe. They have got to know that's not acceptable, and the world has got to tell them they're going to pay a very heavy price for it.
a question about polls. Joe Biden, you and he were running roughly 1-2 in the polls, and then he got into the race officially. He has surged into the lead. You've slipped. What's going on?
Well,
is he appealing to the moderates among Democrats? What's going on?
I think you're going to see, here's my prediction. You're going to see polls that are very good for Joe and for Bernie and polls that are not so good. All I can tell you is that we are working really, really hard. I'm very proud that we have over 1 million people who have volunteered to work on our campaign. I think in our campaign, you're going to see an unprecedented grassroots effort, not only to help me win the primary and beat Trump, but really to take on the powerful special interest who controls so much of the economic and political life of our country.
Are you at all concerned he appeals more to the moderates in the Democratic Party?
No, I think at the end of the day, we're going to be fine because I think our message will appeal to working people. We had polls out there that showed us, by the way, winning in Pennsylvania, winning in Michigan, winning in Wisconsin. And I think we're going to appeal to the heartland. I was just in Iowa the other day. because our message of standing up for a working class in this country, which has been ignored for so long, I think will resonate. And I think people are saying that Trump is a phony. He told the American people he would guarantee health care to everybody. Then he wanted to throw 32 million people off of health care. He wouldn't cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. His budget did exactly that. So we are going to expose Trump for the fraud that he is. We have a message that will appeal to working people, black and white and Latino, all over this country.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you very much. We look forward to watching you on the trail.
Thank you very much, Judy.
Thank you.